Now, one of the things is that you talked about with your husband, which was really amazing when you found out that, or you were thinking that he might have autism. Your husband said, okay, so what do we do now? I mean, what a great response to that.
Yeah.
So, what would you say to parents who are hearing the word autism or whatever it is, whatever invisible disability it is? What would you
Mhm.
say to them when they're hearing it for the first time?
Well, first of all, denial is not going to help in at all. And I've
Hmm.
seen friends that have denied it or said, "Oh, they'll just grow out of it," type of thing, and put off
Hmm.
getting their children the types of interventions that would really help
Yeah.
them later in life, and that breaks my heart. So,
Yeah.
so please, if you've even got an inkling that there might be some kind of an invisible difference, get it confirmed and get some help for your child. As sooner the better. Secondly, I do know that our family is a little bit unique in that my husband did just accept it. And we were in lockstep on the fact that we were going to work as hard as we could to get Brady all the services that he needed. And I have other friends whose husbands have not been as understanding. And in that
Mm-hmm.
case, I think you have to just keep moving forward. You can't put off the kinds of help that your child could really benefit from, and hopefully get some counseling or some other folks
Hmm.
to talk to your spouse about what needs to be done to make sure that your child has the best possible life. But those are kind of more getting into action mode. But
Hmm.
the other thing I would say is, find community. You are not alone. There are other families that are going through something very similar and maybe a little bit further down the path than you are.
Hmm.
And when I found those moms, that was life changing for me to be able to sit
Hmm.
down and have coffee with a
Yeah.
few people whose kids, like you said, they're not the same. Every kid is different, but there are some similarities in a lot of the behaviors and the passions and the interests and those kinds of things. And there are stories that will help you feel like your child is not some anomaly that came along. Your child is just born with a brain wiring that's different.
Right.
And and then lastly, don't ever like somebody told your family and like don't ever discount what your child can do based on
Yes.
a diagnosis or even a suspected diagnosis.
Yeah.
We walked into our first parent training when Brady was 3 and our heads were still spinning from all the autism research we'd been doing. And she told us to cash out his college fund and to, start thinking about building a casita on the back of our house for him to live with us forever. And she'd set this expectation up that he was never going to be able to do anything except go to therapies and, live
Mhm.
in our
Oh
garage.
boy. Wow.
And that, I mean, it is, it, it it's almost criminal to have
It
those kinds
is.
of comments.
Yeah,
Um,
I've said that, it makes me so upset to see educators or medical people think that they are God
yeah,
and know for sure that this is the path for your child.
right, right. And so your child is the same child. Somebody very wise told me this a while back. He is exactly the same kid the day before the diagnosis as the day after the diagnosis.
Hmm.
So
There you
nothing,
go.
nothing has changed. What has changed is that now you have a roadmap. That diagnosis is just a roadmap to help
Hmm.
you understand how best to help your child cope with a world that was
Right.
not designed for him or her, and to be able to thrive in it. And
Right.
um, so, there's so many of those lessons that it took me a long time to learn, but it's so much better now, I think, than 10 years ago when Brady was diagnosed. I really wasn't on
Okay.
Facebook and,
Hmm.
I hadn't ever listened to a podcast. There wasn't this kind of just global encouragement. And there wasn't there, quite frankly, there wasn't the demographics of the kids out there that have this. So,
Mm-hmm.
when I felt like I was the only person I knew with a kid with autism, which was the case initially,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, I mean, now you can't, if you go into a classroom, it's likely that one of the kids in there is going to have autism. And
Mm-hmm.
then, or one of these other invisible neurological differences that fall under this kind umbrella, whether it's, dyslexia or ADHD or
Right.
OCD or sensory processing, like almost 1 in 5 kids, it has something that kind of falls under this kind umbrella.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that you're not alone. You're actually part of a huge community of families that are out there who are looking for
Mm-hmm.
the same kind of hope and encouragement that you are. So,
Yeah, I love that you have formed this community and
yeah.
that you wanted to go outside and help all these other people. Some of the challenges that, you have a whole chapter on shame.
Hmm.
And I think that having the community really helps families realize that they're not the only one,
Right.
and that because a couple of the things that you touched on has really hit me in that, one of the hardest things for me is to secretly see neurotypical kids playing and families being able to go out and they do not have the difficulties that we do. And also that it's also hard to watch other kids soar to great heights.
Hmm.
And I know, sadly, but then I always remind myself, but he's he's got it. He's
Yeah.
going to be okay. He's got
Right.
the skills. He's growing every single day. But those things enter in,
Hmm.
and there are moments of sadness when you see that, or that kids are growing towards independence. In
Yeah.
reality, I know that especially one of mine might not ever be completely independent. And those add moments of you don't want to talk about it. You
Hmm.
don't want to put it out there. And, I appreciated that chapter on shame.
Yeah. And it wasn't shame in our kids. It wasn't my shame
There's no
of
shame
Brady
towards my
at
kids.
all.
No, not at
But
all.
I've always kind of been a people pleaser. I've been I've got to go out and achieve. I've got to walk into a room and figure out what the need is and go meet it. Um, and having a kid that was very different, it was very isolating.
Right, right,
I was like you were saying, watching the other families with the kids. I would in kindergarten, preschool, kindergarten, and first grade. I always felt like the other moms were looking at me because Brady had an 8 in the class and saying, well, what's wrong with him? What did she do wrong? And I
hmm
isolated myself from
That's
relationships in those groups because I didn't feel
right.
like I fit in. I did not have the, quote unquote typical kid that was doing the sports. We weren't going to basketball practices. We were going to speech therapy, and
hmm
um it was this unexpected, what I consider to be a failure in my life plan, and I had a lot of stuff I had to deal with, and some of it was. I mean, I'm not going to lie. There were some people out there who were not kind. There were some parents in
Yeah,
Brady's classroom who were not kind, and
yeah.
so there were things feeding that fear and that shame too.
hmm
Um, but I remember taking Brady to that special school first when we took him out of that preschool and kindergarten that he was in. And all the parents at the pickup line were saying, "Oh, what therapy are you going to this afternoon?" Or, "What medication is your kid on?" And I was like, "What? What? We can talk about this? This is I can be open about
Exactly.
this? Oh my gosh."
Right.
And it was just
Yeah.
this huge weight that was lifted off my shoulders.
Yeah.
Um, so it's now, I mean, I'm so proud of what Brady can do. And, you know, is there a little part of me that, I see kids that are, in the playoffs for their basketball team, or,
Mhm.
traveling to, I'm glad he doesn't play soccer. I've never liked soccer. So that one I'm very grateful for. He never got into soccer, but, going to tournaments and things like that. So do I have these little inklings every now and then? Yeah, I still do. But I would
Yeah.
much rather have a kid who's published, got his forward in a, you know, front of a
There
book.
you go.
And, we were at church yesterday, and there was a mom that came up to me that I didn't know, and she introduced herself because Brady's been helping out in the little kids area. And her son, who is on the spectrum,
Mm.
and he just gravitated to Brady, and he just walked up
Wow.
and held his hand and
Mhm.
said, "Mommy, can we go outside and play?" And Brady took him out into the playground, and they played together. And that's the kid I want. And that's the kid I'm proud of. And those other things, that's their path. Those other things that those kids are doing,
Right.
that's their family's path.
See,
It's not
and
ours.
not comparing because,
Right.
and I mean, everybody has a different start and a different ending, and they can rewrite their story along the way many different times. But I really do feel that everybody has a purpose,
Mhm.
and there is a reason that my kids, your son has autism, and I have autism, and it's used. One of the
Yes.
things that I loved in your book was John 9:13.
Mhm.
Rabbi, who sinned,
Yeah.
this
Right,
man
right.
or his parents, that he was born blind? And Jesus says, neither this man nor his parents sinned, but this happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him. I
Yes.
think so many of us feel that we did something wrong, but you
Yeah.
say in your book, God made him that way on purpose for a purpose that is so beautiful, and
Right.
God doesn't make mistakes,
Yeah.
period. I love your
Yeah.
poem to Brady, by the way. And
Oh,
you said, you are God's work of art. And
yes.
I thought that that was so powerful.
Yeah. Yes. And he is. He's the tagline that Brady's used in the foreword that he we use kind of when he's relating is, "You're fearfully and wonderfully made. We are all fearfully and
Right.
wonderfully made." And even if, I mean, I am not saying that all kind kids need to go off and write a forward or swim 2 miles in a lake or anything like that. But they're
Right.
going to run into people whose lives they are going to change just by being the people
Hmm.
that they are.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it's going to be a teacher, or it's going to be another kid, and they're going to have that impact, that that kind of realizes what their purpose is here on this earth. And
Hmm.
if there's one kind of common thread that I've noticed with most kind kids, is that they are kind and they
Yes.
make positive impacts
Oh,
on other
yes.
people.
Yeah, we were
So,
at a fair, and my son, who has the most challenges, was on a ride, and there was a man who was having a very difficult time getting out of his ride.
mm,
And my son went right over to him, grabbed his hands, and helped him, walked all the way with him till he
oh,
was off of the ride.
oh my gosh.
I mean, those things are more important to
Right.
me than him getting an A in
Yes.
math.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I read somewhere, our kids with autism, and you might experience this, they might have communication problems with another kid, but that doesn't mean that they are not super perceptive
Oh my
about
gosh, they can
other
see.
things that we can't see.
I always say we can
So,
see a tear before it falls,
yeah,
that kind
yeah,
of thing. Yeah, because so many times they really just say that we're not empathetic, but I don't believe
no,
that. We
mm-mm,
do get stuck in our ways, and we,
hmm,
might, but for the most part, we do genuinely care deeply
right,
about
right,
other people and want relationship.
yes,
One of the other things that you touched on when you were talking about schools earlier, I wanted to mention this, was that, special education has its
mm-hmm,
own language.
mm-hmm,
And
right,
when you have several educational professionals in front of you talking
yeah,
test scores and goals, it can be so confusing if you don't understand the language and you don't realize that you need
yeah,
to learn what all that means. And you need to go
Right.
in knowing what your child needs and with a
Yes.
fight. Because if you want your child to become their best self, you have to understand what all the lingo is
Yeah.
and also realize that you have a say at the table and you
Right.
don't have to sign if you
Right.
don't want, if you don't agree, and you can go in with advocates to help you get what your child
Yeah.
deserves. And
Right.
I also like how you liken it to owning a business that you know nothing about, and these teachers and doctors are your employees. And that
Yeah.
is true, but it's so empowering because you are in control of your child, not them.
Right. And you know your child best. You know exactly how they react to criticism. One of the cool things that I think is coming out of that school conversation now is when you're in an IEP meeting, don't just talk about all the things that your kid is challenged by. Also talk
Yes.
about all their strengths so that they can start to
Yes.
play to those strengths. So Brady has, rejection sensitive dysphoria is one of the diagnoses that we got, where if somebody comes in really hard and critical of him, he will melt. And
Mhm.
so there has to be a better approach of somebody in that authority figure. If Brady's
Mhm.
doing something that needs to be corrected, it cannot be, Brady, you're not doing that right. You know, it that will not create the result that they're looking for. There has to
Mhm.
be, Brady, you did this really well. This part, let's see if we could do that a little bit better. You
Mhm.
know, and so there's all kinds uh, of advancements that I think that are out there that parents can lean
Yeah.
on to try to have a better conversation with the schools too.
Well, a lot of our kids are in the gap. I mean,
Yes.
they just are.
Yeah.
And my kids did not fit here or there.
Yeah.
So there was no place for them. But fortunately, our school district created an entire school within the public school system. It's a separate
Wow.
school for kids that fall in the gap
Oh,
who aren't able to learn like other kids. And they have just they've got like three teachers in the class, and every classroom only has like six kids, and they meet every child where they
wow.
are. I mean, can
Wow.
you imagine going in,
Yeah.
meeting every child right where they are? So, but it can be so hard to find the
Yeah.
exact place for our kiddos to go to school and be their
Yeah.
best self.
That's one of the other really exciting things. And, I'm in the greater Phoenix area. I'm in Scottsdale, and there's actually one of Brady's therapists that he went to. They created a school just like what you're talking about
Mm-hmm.
for kids, kindergarten through third grade, and they're now expanding that to some later grades where they have these smaller classrooms. They're getting them included in other activities with typical kids in the mainstream classroom, but there's behavioral techs that know how to guide the kids in the moment
Mm-hmm.
to really get the most out of their day at school. And I think there's a lot of really neat, exciting things that people are starting to
Mm-hmm.
pick up on. And then also
Yes.
because of people like you who are, have had this successful career path, and they know that our kids have things to contribute.
Mm-hmm.
Our
Yeah.
kids are going to be able to contribute awesome things to the world and the community and
Right.
organizations, and we've got to figure out a better way to help them be able to do that. So,
I love how you say in the book that our feelings don't drive results,
mm,
our actions do. And as a parent of special needs kids, and you say, all we need is a willingness to take the next step forward. We need to
right.
get up the next morning,
Yes.
read the next article, go to the next appointment, and talk to the next person. And if we keep finding the next thing to do, even if it's a mistake,
Yes.
it's an experience. And having kids that have special needs and it's an active type of parenting. We have to be on the front lines.
Right.
If I allowed my feelings to dictate what we do, there would be days that I would just sit in bed and not
Yeah.
do anything. So it's that getting up and doing it
Yes.
again the next day.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of the definition of courage, right? So
Yeah,
that's, getting up and doing the hard thing. And I think that every kind parent, that's that's what you are going to be empowered with, because of the love you have for your child and your desire for them to have the best possible
absolutely.
outcome.
Yeah, you also mentioned about anger and being angry with God.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I have had my moments with tears asking why. And,
Hmm.
you know, having a life where there's at times continual frustration or hardship with little breaks
Hmm.
can
Right.
definitely cause moments of questioning and being angry.
Right.
And the other part of it is fear. Fear is huge. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
being afraid of the unknown, afraid of what even our day could be like. And,
Yeah.
there was a line in your book, which is actually the mantra on our podcast. So I found that interesting.
Yeah.
You say that pain has a purpose,
Yeah.
and we always say that there is purpose in the pain and hope in the journey.
Yeah.
So I believe in using our pain for good.
Yeah. Absolutely. And if you can let yourself see the purpose in the pain, it's going to change your life too. And the purpose is kind of the foundation that we all need to have in going forward. We've got to have our lenses dialed into this is my purpose, this is my kid's purpose,
Yeah.
and and try to just take a step every day towards that. So.
Well, if we do what you say in the book and to, not have the invisible cloak, but put on the armor of God,
Yeah.
so where no one can diminish our worth, which I found so profound. I'm such a visual person.
Yeah.
And so I really appreciate all your visuals like that because it was like, oh yeah, but the armor of God, I'm picturing like I have Thor's hammer and I've got,
Yeah.
like all the Avenger stuff on
Yes.
and so yeah,
I love it.
that's my autism coming out because I'm a big Marvel person, DC person.
Oh,
Um,
yeah. Right. My son is too. You guys could probably go on and on about that. So,
oh
as I
yeah,
mentioned,
I have a room just for that.
oh,
And everything has to be exactly where it's supposed to
yeah.
be. And I know when it's not.
Yes. Oh, gosh. Well, you and
Uh,
Brady would get along great.
yeah, I'm sure that we would. I knew it even when I read
Yeah.
his book. So, and I
Yeah.
also was a swimmer, by the way, which was
Oh,
really cool.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I swam. Yeah. You asked a question at the end of your book. If you had the power to snap your fingers and make it so that you never walk through your valley, never experienced the loss of a job, a relationship, never got that diagnosis, or never had to parent a special needs child, would you?
Hmm.
I didn't even have to think. It was no. I mean,
Right.
instantly. How
Right.
about you?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, I can't imagine, especially with now with kind families and taking this turn even career wise. I
Hmm.
know that I'm on the path that I'm supposed to be on personally. I know
Right.
that Brady is inspiring people, and I wouldn't want him, I don't know. I of course I love my kid. We're all biased about our kids, right? But
Right.
I even see some of the, things going on with my neurotypical friends' kids, and I'd rather have mine. I'd rather have mine that still is, coming up with creative things and still lets me tuck him in at bed at night. He'd be mad if he knew that I would let that slip. But, and has faith and
Hmm.
um, ha isn't caught up in the teenager, let me figure out who I'm going to be. And so I'm going to be somebody different every other week. I mean, Brady knows
Hmm.
exactly who he is and he can't fake being something that he's not. And
Hmm.
so, and all the people that have come into our lives, I cannot imagine him being any different than he is today. And he asked me, I actually blogged about this too one time, if he would have autism in heaven. And I I that was a tough one and I had to think about it a little bit, but I said, yeah, I don't think you're going to have the hard things about autism. I don't think you're going to struggle with communicating with your peers or, staying organized or all of these other things. They're not going to mean anything anymore. But
Mm-hmm.
you are who you are with autism included. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't think heaven would be as good if you didn't have autism because then you wouldn't have all of those wonderful qualities that autism brings you. And so, yeah.
It's true. So
Yeah.
many people with autism really bring very beautiful things to this world. And I think that we would have a very different world if we didn't have autistic individuals. So,
Yes.
um, could you talk more about finding kind families in your podcast a little bit and how people can get a hold of you?
Sure. So, easiest way is kindfamilies.com, which is the Kind Families website. The Kind Families podcast is on Apple and Spotify, and we release episodes every other Tuesday. So, we're about to wrap up the first season of Kind Families podcast, and we'll start into the new season in a few weeks. And then Finding Kind, you can actually access through the Kind Families website. And it is available as an ebook on Amazon as well. We'll be hopefully releasing a paperback and audiobook later, but right now, hardback is available through my website and ebook on Amazon. So.
So, when they come to your website and they want to
Mhm.
join the community,
Mhm.
what should people expect?
So the community right now is getting some blogs, some of the stories that I'm writing on a regular basis, and updates on some of the podcast guests that I have coming. You can
Okay.
certainly reach out. There is a way to reach out to me directly, and I respond to everything personally. So if somebody has a personal question that they want to ask or access to resources and that sort of thing, the
Mm-hmm.
Kind Families website does have a resource page, and one of the things that I see people using it a lot for is that same questionnaire that I filled out
Mm,
online. There's an
got it.
organization called the Southwest Autism Research and Resource Center here in Phoenix. And that was their questionnaire that they now use in screenings in preschools and all over the place. And it's a real quick and easy thing to just kind of say, is this a possibility for my child? And also a similar one for ADHD. So there's tools and resources. There's an opportunity to access me, access the podcast, and order the book as well. So,
I think it's so amazing that you have done this with your time and you walked away from a 30-year career to do this for other people and take your story with your son and help other people. I want to end with these beautiful words that you said. Sometimes you have to take your eyes off the elephant in the room and concentrate on the blessings around it. And that really, it again, as a visual person, I want to say thank you for saying that because so many times we can miss the beauty in the room because we are so focused on the one thing or what we consider to be a problem, and we can miss all the beauty around it. And my kids and your Brady are, they're the most beautiful children and they were made on purpose for a purpose, like you said. And
right.
I see them all the time making a difference in others' lives. And
Mhm.
I wouldn't have it any other way. So thank you so much, Carrie, for being
Thank
here
you.
today. And, you've made a difference here.
Oh,
So
thank you so
thank you.
much. And I've loved our conversation. Thank you.
Yeah. And for our listeners, we will see you next time.